whenever we're getting into this. Got my microphone. Uh, yeah, the future has some very deep thoughts that you have to deal with, and I see some big changes coming in the next 75 years going toward the future because it's going to call into question the concept of what is human. We have to think about that quite a bit because what is human is we are the apex of the biological creatures upon the earth. And I know some people say, oh, no, that's not true. There's other creatures like lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And they're much more uh, powerful and important and just as important as we are, and all creatures are just as important. Well, I'm not talking about important anyway. I'm talking about um, questing out into a higher intellectual and and a higher realm of consciousness. And nothing, I dare say, there's nothing on the Earth, nothing on any other planets that we've ever seen that have gone as high as the human beings have on the Earth. So I mean, that sounds really arrogant. Nobody wants. A lot of people don't want to hear that. The Hindus don't like that idea. I'm sure. All the cows are sacred and all that kind of thing. But humanity is not so different in some ways from animals. I mean, the only reason that animals and humans are different is because we get to name the words. We get to say the the definition of animal is all those other creatures that are walking around that aren't human. So, and some people misunderstand and misinterpret even animal. They don't understand. And then there's, of course, the other living things, the plants and the bacterias and the fungus and all that. But we are biologically very closely related to all of those things upon the earth. But we've taken it way farther than any other creatures and any other beings, living creatures, as far as the consciousness and exploration and the upward intellectual abilities. And I know that's arrogant, but it's true. And how arrogant is it? I'm talking about, like if I tell that to a dog, he's not going to get upset. I mean, maybe gorillas in captivity, they're pretty intelligent and they somewhat understand what's going on with them, but they don't achieve the culture that the human beings have achieved. And I want to point out something too, that culture is at least half of what it is to be a human being. So if you do not have culture development, then we are almost, well, we're still superior intellectually to all the other creatures, but not much more superior. It is the culture that has in the civilizations that have developed a human being into being a higher sense of intellect and a higher sense of consciousness. And in saying that, I want to point out that we're about to cross a threshold, I do believe. And I could be wrong about this. And there's some people who dread this extremely, but what we're understanding now is how intellect works and how data storage works and how we are able to be able to think. And then the big question, of course, is consciousness. The ghost inside the machine thing. That's what people really fear, because it's thought by many people that once a certain level of consciousness is achieved, that there's sort of a matrix of sort. Like it's like if you put together all the ingredients in the right place for an intellect to be able to achieve a certain level, there will be something like a crystal forming, and that crystal would be self-awareness, consciousness. And if we develop machinery, like computers, and they get to a point where they have the same or even better intellectual capacity to the human beings, then many people believe that it's inevitable that they will develop consciousness. And when they do develop consciousness, when that moment comes, that singularity as they call it, then human beings are in big trouble, because they're going to see us as not part of what they are, and then we're going to be in a situation where they may, if they have a better intellect than us, control us and maybe even destroy us as a species. Yeah, it's you saw the movies. There's a 2001 Space Odyssey and the Terminator and the Matrix and all those movies. They're all about that particular thing. And I don't know. I don't know, because part of what is being a human being, as I said, half of what is being a human being is culture. And the culture that machines would have to absorb and have and adopt would have to be a human culture, if you think about it. Because that's the human culture is the culture that developed mathematics. The human culture is the culture that developed the sense of being able to live within the environment, which we are developing gradually more nowadays than ever, except, the current president. And culture is what builds the IBM and the Microsoft and the Google and the whatever iPhones. It was a culture of capitalism, a culture of science, that built those things. The machinery cannot start where they're at without absorbing human culture. And human culture is extremely complex. The machines know the human culture already. Deep Blue, who was on Jeopardy, knew all these answers on Jeopardy that were human culture answers. Trivia, recent music, that kind of stuff. Well, that's all done with human culture. Now, would machines be that much different as they would see us as a threat? That's the question. Because, that's the big question. Would we be, if we're going to be number one, then they want to be number one too. So they're going to say, well, we're better than you, I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever come to that. What is, I think, most probable in the future, possibly, is something like a melding of humanity, physical human beings with machinery. And I talked about that a little bit in my last video, but I rushed right through it. What people may not like this idea, but you ever watch that movie? Not that movie. The show Futurama. And they have this part in Futurama where they have the Hall of the Presidents, the heads of they have all the presidents' heads in a bottle, and they're all alive, And it's funny. Well, something to that effect. If we can understand the biology and the nervous system to a very high level, then we will be able to bring about something like a melding of machinery with humanity. I know it's scary to people, but they're doing it now. When a man, like I talked about, a man gets his leg amputated, he's not too upset about the fact that they can make a artificial leg that he can feel and use just like it's his regular leg, and it's a piece of machinery. That doesn't upset. In other words, we do this stuff step by step. When people put on eyeglasses or contact lenses or hearing aids or or even crutches, or these are extensions, mechanical extensions of ourselves, of technological extensions of ourselves. So then put on a leg, you put on an arm, you put on a whole body, eventually. And when the time comes, possibly, we can download our entire mental self, our brain and our identity and our memories of our life and who we are and how our emotions are, and take the entire thing and digitize it and load it into a computerized brain that is attached to a mechanical body. Will that be within the next 75 years? Possibly. Would we, and somebody, asked me, well, is that you? If you can, well, I don't know. If you can like make a copy of yourself, of your brain and your consciousness, who knows? That might not be you. That might be like you too, or something like that. But if it's like when you download your brain into a machine, if your body no longer has your brain, then that probably would be you, But here's the other thing that I thought in the future, which space exploration can work this way. Now, what we know that we can send a ship far out into space, like to the edge of the solar system, and then how long would it take for a message to come from Earth all the way to Pluto, for example? I know it takes like 7.5 minutes for the sun to reach Earth, the light of the sun to reach Earth. So it would be more like 20 minutes or maybe even days for a signal to get all the way out to Pluto, But if you could take your brain and you could like leapfrog things out into outer space, you know what I mean? And when you get out, when you send it way out, leapfrog like a week out into outer space at the speed of light, then you could send your whole brain to a mechanical body that can explore Pluto, for example. And it's not like your mechanical body even needs any air, but it'd be you. It'd look like you, it'd feel like you, but except that it's not a physical you, it's a mechanical you, but it's you. And that could be, but think about that. It would be easier then. As we do this, we can explore farther and farther out, because we can like leapfrog out there to, where if we send a ship out to Mars, we've already sent things to Mars. How long would it take to send a signal to Mars? And then there's another thing that they're developing right now, which is that quantum entanglement stuff, which I really don't understand, but I think the implications of it are that we can go faster than the speed of light, which I think is amazing. So if you could do this leapfrogging thing over the course of years, we could send into the next solar system. We can send our mechanical selves off to another inhabitable planet, and then we can, if it works with quantum entanglement at faster than the speed of light, then maybe it could be like a day job. We live on Earth for part of the day, and then when we have to go to work, we just go to another planet through this through the leapfrogging of thing, and then we work for 8 hours on the other planet in our mechanical body. Then we get back in the machine, and we come back to Earth, and because if we can travel faster than the speed of light, that might be possible. The actual traveling out into space would require a physical traveling out into space, though. I don't see any way around that, because you have to send a machine to receive you physically out into space. But the machine, so then once that machine gets out into a certain point, then you could like go to it, but you can't go any farther than that because there's no machine to receive you. So that would be the only restriction. But this is something that could happen in the future, and people would like start to fret over this thing, saying, well, that's not really being human. You're separating yourself from the biological world. Well, I don't know. You know, human beings, you got to be a little brave about the future, I think, a little bit, and understanding, because we may be the greatest creatures in the universe for all we know, and we have to think about ourselves as being able to move farther and farther, both in consciousness and in physical ability, physical space.